Oh my goodness. This is a very special guest on the Phil Carew Show. It's Bram Frank, FMA martial artist, and also well known for his Filipino weaponry. He customizes those as well himself. Oh my goodness. You know, what I'd like to do is introduce you to Bram Frank now. Over to you, Bram.
Hi,
Wow.
thank you. It's such a pleasure. You guys don't know, we've been talking behind the scenes because he's from Cebu. My wife is from Cebu. I'm married to a Cebuano, and from the northern part. And you guys might know Doug Mercaida, Fortune Fire. That's like my wife's, second cousin. And Grandmaster Felix Roles, that's my wife's first cousin. And we were at a show. I was talking with Grandmaster Felix Roles about different knives. He was repping in the booth behind me, came over to pay respects, and Nova called, my wife. So she starts talking, goes, "Is that your wife?" I said, "Yes." They start talking, like I don't exist. And they start laughing. And they go, "Oh, we're first cousins." And I went, "You are?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm from one village away." So, when I haven't been able to get to the Philippines because of COVID, as I was telling you off screen. So he just went there to see his family, went up to visit Nova, spent the day with her, and sent stuff back to me because I needed my son Gut brought back to me. It's a Filipino son Gut because it's from Cebu. It's got that clip tip. But so I'm glad I'm Filipino inside, even though I may be round eye outside. By the way, for all of you listening, I've done Filipino martial arts for 46 years. I started training in martial arts in 63, and in 65, I was in my first real program. I'm almost 70, so I'm an old guy. I was with Remy Presas for 21 years. And I'm blessed to have studied a lot of other people. And through Remy, I met Bobby Tabata when he first came to the country. I met him in my living room as Bobby. Bobby's now one of my last living kuyas, because Roland Dantes was my kuya for all. Cristino Vasquez, Remy's first cousin, who lived across the street from Remy, adopted me into his family after Remy had passed. And Cristino used to take care of Berto, the youngest Presas brother. I gave the Remy's eulogy with Ernesto at the main Hall of Fame. Filipino arts, just, I know, sort of babbling around people. Filipino arts affected everything I did. I always wanted to be a knight in shining armor. I studied HEMA because my dad used to restore paintings and swords and stuff for the museums. My dad was the late artist illustrator Robert Gould. So he grew up working in museums. My parents were both professors. So I grew up wanting to be, the white knight at the round table. No martial art would let me do that. If you've done regular karate type stuff, you had to learn empty hand before they let you touch any kind of weapon, which drove me nuts. Down in my dad's shop, I used to build swords and arms and armor and all that kind of stuff. And when I met Remy, the first thing he did was put a weapon in my hand and said, "Let's do this. Screw this empty hand stuff," Filipino martial arts, to get you to understand the motion. And he kept talking about cutting. And everyone thought he meant the cutting motion through the air. What he meant was, because his family taught bolo to the to the bolo battalions, he really meant sword work. And just so all you people there who are listening, Filipino martial arts that we know it would not exist without the Spanish, without the Portuguese, and HEMA. The way we step, what we do, we don't step or move like any other martial art in the world. We move like European fighters. And I mean, the old, late Renaissance period, everything from the late 1500s all the way through the 1800s. And the Philippines were technically a colonial society for 400 years. And Spain's way of conquering people was they made you Spanish. They didn't divide the class and have Spanish and someone else. So like what they used to do in Japan, they'd ship people off to Spain, let them be educated in Spain, have them come back, and parents would have their kids come back. And it'd be like getting someone from Cyberdyne, a Terminator type thing. They looked right on the outside, but inside they become Spanish. So they learned all the Spanish techniques. Everything we do, even the Filipino fighting vests, they're technically Spanish fighting vests. Everything we do from our clock system, we're European. We're the last preservation. We don't have to recreate European fighting. We do it. anyways, Filipino martial arts covers a wide gamut, as you probably know. And that's what gave me such freedom. You know, I'm a Wing Chun baby to start with, and Hungar. Wing Chun is still my base. It affects everything I do. I studied with Jun Ri, so I did Jun Ri karate because he was smart enough to call it karate. People what he goes Korean karate because they didn't know what Taekwondo was. And because of Jun Ri, you get eventually, because of association with Bruce Lee, we don't kick like the other Koreans. You know, Bruce Lee's kicking is what we were doing that came from Jun Ri, and that eventually becomes the PKA. And off of the PKA, professional karate, you get the WKA. And those guys were serious hardcore, as Jun Ri did, slammer jammers. And all of that led me to meet, by the way, Clarence Murray, the Psy Master, because he was with that group of the Jun Ri guys from Washington who dominated everything. He came out to study in Minnesota and spent some time there at the Jun Ri school to keep me from the other students, because I was talking about farang and weapons and doing whatever, and to keep Clarence from contaminating sport karate. They put us together, and Clarence Murray set me up to meeting Remy because he made sound effects, even in his hakama when he's out there with his swords, where his sides going, "Hiya, pata, patani!" And I looked at him,
Yeah.
everyone thought he was nuts, and I fell in love with it. And then when I met Remy be, "Oh, Bram, you know, you did it, come on, you hit the cha-cha, you said cha-cha, you there." And I'm like, oh my God, Remy's just like Grandmaster Clarence Murray. And Remy was a trip. But I owe everything. Who I am now, I owe to the Philippines. I designed my knives in honor of the Philippines and named after the Philippines. And, you know, when I met Remy, nobody had training knives. He gave me a little dowel. So overnight, I cut the dowel real thin to make a blade and make a handle. And Remy, the next morning, said, "What's that?" And I said, "Well, I needed a knife." So I, you know, made it flatter so it wasn't round so I could have an edge orientation and made a blade. He goes, "Bram, maybe you should make us training knives." So I started making wooden training knives. So I made them just like I could make them out of steel. I cut a blank, ground it, bolt, actually bonded handles on it in a guard, and used to do those for our seminars. And I went, it's not real enough. Then I started taking real knives and making molds of them. So the handles were exact. And then I'd pour 2 halves of the grinds, you know, press them, make the blade really thick, press the grinds on either side to make my prototype, my final one. So it was exactly like a real knife, whatever that knife was, Randall's or Spyderco's or Benchmade's, whatever back then, because I didn't have my own knife back then. But the blade was really thick, it wouldn't break. And I used to make it for Gonzo at Team 2. I have them on display in Randall because I made all the different Randall models. I collect Randall Model 1s. And I finally went, and I kept showing people some designs I had, and Remy would nod his head and go, okay. I grew up, and this is a little side, it actually goes with my knives. I grew up with my grandfather taking me down. He played cards with the guys down the subway. In my era, 50s and 60s, subways were bright white, clean. And at the base, as you go down, guys would sit there and, you know, play cards with each other and talk. My grandfather would play cards or whatever they're doing down there. They'd give me a bag of tokens. They're like a quarter, a penny a piece, half a penny a piece. And I would go through a turnstile. Turnstiles are kinetic energy, not the new ones that swing, but the old ones with the swinging. You go to push them, the stored energy go wham. So I tried to see how fast I go through it. Well, you push it too hard, it doesn't go, it jams. You get it to move smoothly. I tried to see if I get it so it wouldn't hit my butt, because as soon as it goes, the stored energy makes it go faster. And if you get it to spin really fast, it hits you right through there. And I went, that would be cool. And I kept thinking, what could I apply that? Got to take a left turn at Albuquerque here. Buckminster Fuller used to talk about synergism. You find something that works in one area of life and you transplant it to another area and make it work. That's synergism. You know, without Buckminster Fuller, you wouldn't have geodesic domes and all this cool stuff. Anyways, I thought about it. And when I first described it, people like Mike Jan, some others who are other famous knife and martial artists in the old days, they wrote a couple of their interviews about me going, we listened to Bram say what he wanted to do. And look, we rolled our eyes and went, sure. And my very first one, when I came up with the prototype, I said, look, if you touch it, it opens. And they all went, what? Because I kept talking. I wanted something we could do pressure points. We could rake with it. I could grab with it. And unlike Ernie's wave, because Ernie and I showed each other, he goes, "Oh, look what I came up with." I said, "Look what I came up." I wanted something because I'm Cancerian. I'm a what in the flow, Filipino flow, that if I touch you, it's open.
Wow.
And I use it for trapping, and I can move it for redirect and grabbing. And I own the patent. I came because all of us used to do indexing, forward to reverse grip. So I actually made indexing points and patented that we have so we go from forward to reverse grip while taking our hand off the tool. And when I first showed Remy, he goes, "Oh, Bram, you were ahead of your time. That's amazing." Because he's through the big three with Wally J and George Dillman. So the pressure point did all the small circle jujitsu, which became part of our Dumog. When I was before the Grandmaster Council in Rizal Park, and I was doing my part of demo, they all went, "Oh, he must have spent years studying with Wally J." And I went, "Well, indirectly, yes, because of Remy, but what I call our Filipino Dumog in modern East, because of all this time with Remy, became like small circle jiu-jitsu, and of course, Dumog and all the pressure points as well,
Yes.
He's jiu-jitsu." Anyways, all that became part of what I do with my knives. And Remy came and goes, "You named them after Filipino motions." I go, "Yeah, 90% of them." Because my first knife, I wanted to call it the gunting, because in the Philippines, it's not just a scissoring. The connotation is a gradual limb destruction, as I escalate in force. So my first knife, the guy had recat. He hated Asians. So it was round eye knife and tool. Bob Taylor, his own personal quirks. But at least he was willing to make my first knife. And I couldn't call it the gunting. So when I said it escalates, so he called it the escalator. And the escalator turned out to be the first kinetic opening knife, and there were no thumb studs, no discs, no holes, nothing. You had to ramp open it. And people went, did that just open? I went, "Yep." So, it actually became a utility function when I moved to Spyderco. And people came in. Mossad Ayub, when he wrote for Shotgun News, said, "Oh my God, it's a historic day in the world of knives." This is 99, 2000. He goes, "Bram invented a knife to be used closed," because that's what I wanted. That it's not how fast you get it open. To me, it's a dulo. And can I impact it? Can I use it to hammer with and trap with, and I don't have to cut you? Now, Shashir, you might know Datu Shashir Nakala, Grandmaster Turtle. He was Michelangelo for 2 films, inside those costumes. And he was Remy's adopted son and the vice president of Modern East back then. And, he's a priest, a Taoist priest. And he looked at my stuff and he said, "Redo." I said, "Well, I wanted it to imbibe this with the soul of a bally song, because with a bally song, you can hit with it closed. A bally song, you can pinch and rock with open. I call it Waka Waka. Pac-Man. You ever seen Pac-Man go through Waka Waka Waka?
Yeah.
That I could do snap cutting, or I can touch it and it's open, or because
Wow.
my lock is on the back, it's firearm stuff, it closes in the flow. So it does everything a bally song does without having to do all that flippy whippy weird stuff. And Shashir, who's Mr. Bally's song back then, Remy and me stud with him many, many years ago, said, "Oh, Bram, you made a Bally song without having to open flip it." I said, "I know." So the soul of the Philippine really lives in my tools, and they can open and close on the flow, which any Filipino needs. Most other knives, this is a Fox version of an Emerson. Once it's open, I'm stuck with it. It's open. You can't do anything else with it. But my tools, I can full force continuum. What any good Filipino, I can start banging on you. If you get the idea, I got it. You don't get the idea, I'll give you a little more persuasion of what to do. And if you still don't get it and I'm in there, well, I'll let it open. And if in the middle of opening it, you start to comply, oh, I shut it back down to non-lethal. And of course, it's got a Philippine bird beak end, just like this is a Presas Polo. I've kept those alive. The Philippine government named me the guardian of legacy of Polo, and I keep Remy's Polo alive. But I've incorporated all different things that I learned from Filipino martial arts into my tools. It makes me smile because it helps me propagate Filipino martial arts, because This is the closest thing my teams can carry. You can't carry a sword. You can't carry a stick. A machete is a de-evolution of a bolo, and a bolo is a hundidao from southern China. So a big knife, not a small sword, went down to the Philippines, and they become the bolos. Just a knife. Machetes and farm tools come from after that. In today's world, a machete can be found in every country. It's the #1 terror tool in the world. It's the #1 big knife in the world. And so there's a reason to teach Filipino bolo. And a lot of my teams, my tactical teams, use my bolos because they bump into guys with machetes. Nobody carries samurai swords. No one carries two-handed broadswords. No one carries, well, some people carry tomahawks and axes, but overall, you know what they mean. Traditional martial art and arms and armor don't carry in today's world, but pocket knives, you can carry pocket knives almost everywhere. And that's why I wanted something that would give us impact, that we could do limb destruction and entries and controls without harming someone. And I tried to bring Filipino spirit into my tools. And people said, what are you doing? I said, well, everybody teaches stick and argue with each other about who does better stick. I used to hear people say modern East was too simple. And in America, as you were, when we talked, I said, people go, oh, Kali is the mother art. Eskrima comes under that. And our East say, you're the wimps of the world. And I used to hear that. And when I finally started studying at Remy and spent all my time in the Philippines, and like I said, I'm a good Minson kid. I read Therefore I Am, and I study arms and armor and archaeology, as side stuff. Arnis is the main word. Eskrima comes from central Visayas and some of the regions they talk about, like the skirmish and Eskrima. And, and Kali has nothing to do with the Philippines, as the University of Cebu said. It's a word that went from America after World War II and during the Korean War, as more Americans went back over to the Philippines going, I heard this. And it's branding. There's nothing wrong with it. But, people in the Philippines, people here try to say it's an important word in the Philippines and what it is. And there's no basis really in the Philippines. In modern era, it has. It's been there for so many years. People would show up, go, teach me this. And of course, you're from the Philippines, you get it. Sure, pay me. I'll teach you whatever you want. What do you want to call it? You want to call it Hukumaki art? Sure, pay me. I'll teach you. It's a poor country, and they're not doing it out of being bad. So I look at all that, and I say, look, it's in today's world. I accept, a rose is a rose by any other name. I don't care what you call it. I got people want to argue my art's better than yours, and I'm like, whatever, especially stick art. And I'm like, look, there's 3 phases to the art. There's any kind of traditional form. I don't care if it's new history, old history. You have a way to preserve the art form of it, great. You have the sport version, which Remy also wanted, and that's varying from Weekuff to some of the non-stop point fighting, and some of the guys with padded sticks and little arm, whatever version of sport they do. And then combatives. Each of them has their own separate venue. They have similarities. They don't live in each other's venue, and their truths are not always the same. People say truth is truth, and I go, no, truth is mutable. You got to be careful what truth you look for, because the truth you find may not be the one you were looking for, and it might actually be the opposite. And as an example, Paul, if we're talking about it, if I say this cut will always work, well, it was Leo Huron was talking a story about fighting in the jungle. They had taught him a move, and he did the move that's supposed to slice the guy in half, attack the Japanese soldier, turned to the other guy, took care of the soldier, turned around and realized the first cut did nothing to the first soldier. It bandoliers on. So the blade ran across his and never cut him. So this will always stop someone became untrue. Clothing. The
Yes.
Philippines, I live in Florida. We wear t-shirts. It's just like the Philippines, why so many Filipinos live here, and it's hot. We're the only tropics in the United States. We have real rainforests and palm trees. That's why Remy used to go, Bram, it's just like home, which is what, but the reality of what we wear, if you go back to where I was from in New England, which is, till I got to England at first, I didn't know why they called it New England. I knew technically we came from English stuff. It looks just like it, same rolling hills and small mountains, the same forest, the same bit, and it's freaking cold. And you grew up wearing multiple layers, and the same touch, do absolutely nothing with heavy clothing on. So truth is mutable. Telling someone to always work, environment can change the truth. Truth is supposed to be truth. You're not making anything up, telling a lie.
Yes.
Using truth as a physical thing, truth can be mutable depending upon venue, environment, whatever, and the way we approach things. So I've added that. And, Remy had come to me and asked me, did I want to learn stick or bolo? And he told me that his family, taught bolo. Told me why it was bad, why teaching military and police is unrewarding. It's very simple, it's very brutal, and I shouldn't do it. And I stood there looking at us. He told me, he goes, so you should pick. I figured, and it was a test. If I was going to say, sure, I'll do all the beautiful stick work with you, that's great. Now I don't want to get involved in that. Or I'll do blade. I don't care if it's rewarding. It's for the soul. The soul of our niece, the soul of the Philippines is the bolo. The beauty of the art is any of the stick work, single, double. Nothing's more beautiful than stick work, ever. Most amazing stuff for war. And not that it isn't effective. No one gives you a stick to fight war. I don't care what the stick be. We put a blade in your hand. When we finally figured out that firearms work, firearms displaced, blades as a battle tool, but still, it never runs out of bullets. It cuts in every angle. It's just as deadly today as when they first invented an edge tool, 3.9 million years ago, when a humanoid did it, not humans. So, I told Remy yes, and I've continued, and I'm honored that I'm called the guardian of the legacy of bolo, and it's always been a trip to go back to teach in the home country and bring bolo there. It took me years to find the family that made Remy's bolos, and when I did, I had them continue to make them because I have Remy's grandfathers and his uncles. Christina said, oh, Bram, he told us when he took them off the mantle and gave them to you. And back then, everyone said, what's a bolo? I was the black sheep of modern East. Nobody wanted to talk to me because I didn't do tappy-tappy. I didn't do all this work, and I made all my guys stop doing it to do bolo. And as Remy said, you got to know how to translate. You have to know how to innovate and make it your own. And he said, I supercharged our niece when I came up with my modular program to be able to teach his system. You've probably seen most Filipinos have no system of teaching. They teach whatever's in their head. And ungrouped Balinta walks that way. They teach whatever the instructors can do one-on-one. Bobby Tabata is the master. Beautiful, beautiful grouping system. I don't know who started grouping, but he definitely brought it to perfection. Freaking amazing. The idea of groups is anything can be in a group. Modular, the pieces have to interact. So I made sort of based, because I'm a Wing Chun baby, and I had mentioned that before. I have 3 basic forms of 3 moves a piece that are based off Filipino motions. When I got done, Remy said, oh, you supercharged my arnis. You found a better way to teach it. I didn't invent it. It's his stuff. Because we used to be playing on my porch and he would all of a sudden change up. What that's like. You're banging away and then we're not doing the same drill. And then you go right back to it. I'm getting bonked in the head. He's smacking me. He goes, Bram, relax, do this. I go, oh, what are you doing? He goes, oh, do not matter. And I'm like, do not matter. Just do that. And I realized when he found the common element, the same move within a different drill, he could seamlessly move to the next drill, which is what modules are. Legos are modules. So so all of that affects how I teach. So, and that's what I mean. For a long time, I was, like I said, the black sheep. I taught blade. I wouldn't touch, because a lot of stick stuff, you can grab a stick and rip it out of your hands. Well, I can do that once. Because as soon as I grab that blade, I'm done. My fingers come off. Yes, I've had my fingers come off and had them put back on. I'm lucky they work.
Wow.
blades with tape on them. I have many scars and stuff from being with Remy and from our training groups. We put on leather gauntlets, like we're back in European fencing days. Leather gloves with just our fingers exposed. Leather protectors as we fought with live blades. The insurance companies were not happy with us at the school there, so we weren't supposed to do that.
Wow.
But and I was with a very famous person. I will not say his name. He's very good at stick. I was there with Roland Dantes doing it because I can do bolo. And we start to do bolo. And Roland's laughing. He rolling his eyes. He knew it was
Wow.
fun. And every time this guy made contact bolo to bolo, he'd grab my bolo, go, I rip it out of my hand to go to move, and I'd stop and go, I won. He'd go, no, I've got your tool. I said, no, you don't. What you've got is part of a hand and your fingers are on the floor. You have fingies, RNS are on the floor. I won. Oh, I wouldn't do that for real. I went, we're here in a safe training environment, just playing, sparring, and you can't even stop yourself here from grabbing the blade. That means in real, you'll grab a blade, so you're not blade people. And I tell people, I've had to modify a lot and did stuff with Remy because people want to, pass. The old Filipino stuff where they pass swords and drop their hand. Well, in the Spanish days, I've got gauntlets on and metal studs. And a lot of times the side of the blade and the back, where the ricasso is, you can actually grab here. There's no sharp edge on the bottom of the sword. It's designed so I can put a second hand there. It's designed that you never block a blade with a tip because it'll flex. So you block closest to your hand. So that's why those swords had massive blocks here and no edge, because that's where I was supposed to catch the other sword. I didn't put my hand there.
Oh.
And two of my students who are, HEMA masters and are working on their doctorate in it, they have old Spanish where the guards, they have gauntlets. The swords and knives are locked in your hands. You can do what we sort of do with Filipino stuff where we, have a tool in our hand that we grab with our fingers. Well, when they open the tool doesn't fall out. It's locked in your hand with your hands protected. You're wrapped in leather and metal, people. But over time, those same motions, people do them wrap the hand and go, I know you can do that. You may not. No, I can. I said, I know you can. So that's why eventually I only, I went to blade because what I learned from blade is there's a finality. Anything I do with blade, I can do with stick.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, Bram, because the thing is, what I've noticed as well, just to mention on here, what have you noticed about any changes that you've seen over the years? Because I've noticed in FMA, articles, other interviews that I've studied and listened to, because I know there's always would you say from your own personal experience, what you've seen, like you said earlier, that certain people have their own sort of style, their own system. What have you noticed? Is there any sort of things that you feel that's still the same, or have you seen any actual changes that they've just added to it, where they've said, well, look, this is what it is, how you do things, because
well, there's modern changes. You're absolutely right. And there's people, because there's always a style.
Yes.
The style is a personal representation. So maybe they got their style from their master or their family, and they teach the family style. The way of teaching, that may evolve. And some of these people went, like Eric Noss, and Mark Denny, who, Dog Brothers, because they went,
Yes.
Higher consciousness through harder hitting. Well, that's really good. Of course, they were proving a point that a lot of the art stuff you do, if some, because you have no intent, that if someone just intent to beat you with a stick, all that little light, if you don't have intent, lights up, wham, your stick's gone, it's through it, the stick's embedded in your head. And they proved a point. And so different ways of teaching have come up. I have no problem with the people who still want to teach whatever the art was. And some people, as they have found the old, what I call flowery ways, and they're beautiful. It's the beauty of the art. And I don't care if it's the beauty of the art for beauty or the beauty of the art and I can use to beat someone up. within that whole thing. And some people have decided sparring is the only way. No matter what they say, sparring develops timing and ability to be hit. It's dueling. It's not what happens in combat. It's the same as combat. No, it's not. And the de-evolution of sparring is like Olympic fencing. It's lost a piece of reality. And if you ever done point fighting, dueling is he who gets there firstest wins the mostest. So if you and I are dueling, and I always say, who won? I come up, I poke you in the shoulder, you right then, half a beat after, stab me through the heart. Who won? And people go, well, you're dead. I said, who won? I tagged Paul in the shoulder. I won. I'm dead. My second is really happy because he doesn't have to share it with me. He gets Paul's money and my money. And Paul's second is going, how could you stab him half a beat afterwards? And you're like, he was just faster than me. That's dueling. In real, that's how come point fighters found out, because they're really fast. They tagged a few times. They're like boxers who jab, and all of a sudden, wham, you get hit by the hook or the cross, and you're out. The reality is, it doesn't matter if a guy scored points if you knock him out. So sport has a whole variety. And what people don't understand is combatives, depending upon what kind of combative zone we're in, street to insurrections to war, they give us different rules. If we're on deployment, we can't shoot the guy if he's down. We can't just arbitrarily kill people. We can't go to the bad guys if there's no open fire zone and just kill them. That's against the rules. There's no rules in combat. In war, actually, there are. We have rules in war. That doesn't mean people don't break them. People don't do horrific things. But I go, rules. So back to what you said about changing. FMA, I love some of the changes. And I think one of the best changes is people go from different styles to different styles and get together at big gatherings and share their styles. And I tell my guys, if you see something, try it. If you like it, I'm not going to stop you from adding it into your library, your toolbox. If you don't like it, don't do it. But don't look at it and go, that's stupid. We don't do that. All you should say is, we don't do that. How'd you do that? I think FMA has gone from being closed families to most of them. There's still some who don't want to deal with it, where we're all willing to share with each other. We're all willing to share the floor. And there's a group of us, Brian Zawolinsky, Dan Anderson, Chad Bailey, Bruce Chu. We like to feed off of each other. So whoever goes first at a seminar, we watch them. Whatever they taught, I'll feed off of that. They feed off of me. We play back and forth. And I think that's a great thing. So you can go places, and FMA guys are not showing something totally different. Even if the style's different or the methodology, I think in today's world, there's respect for other people that didn't exist before. And, when you get combined groups together, that if they see someone, they'll teach their own thing. Go, by the way, when the gentleman before me, when Phil was here, when Paul was here, when Bruce was here, when they did this, well, here's what I would have done. Sort of like official karate. They go, here's a back punch. How would you deal with it? And each instructor had a page of 4 or 5 steps to show what they do from each different style. I like that everyone's going, here's what they did, here's what I would have done, here's the similarity, or here's why we're different, but we're still thinking the same way. So that's what's different. There's no tribal, don't bother me for most of it anymore. Everybody wants to share. And they don't lose their individuality. And I think FMA has grown because they realize that tools have grown. Tools have changed. And I think FMA guys are starting to see that. When I started, they told me everything is the same. Stick, knife, sword. And it's not true. The tool changes the reality. And there's stuff you can't. I was told point your knuckles, and they hit stick to stick. You would never do that with a blade, because I hit edge to edge. I'm going to ruin my blade. And no one would listen to me till Hero came out, with Jet Li.
Yes.
And he's banging away, and a movie, not even real. And you watch his blade hitting edge to edge, finally it cracks and his blade snaps in half. People come back to me and go, oh my God, did you know his blade snapped in half? Sir, it's what you said. And I'm like, Oh my God, it took a movie. It took a, and what I like to do is, my instructor camp, my birthday bash, and this goes back to what you're saying about how things have changed. I took two inexpensive machetes, and Chad and I blocked it properly with the flat because blades, if it's forged, it's got to bend out true.
Yeah.
Forged blades, and you can absorb impact on the side. You can't absorb impact on the edge. That's the hardest part. That's what we temper the hardest. This would be the softest, and this has to have flex to it. So, I'm banging. Nothing's wrong with mine. He's already getting a rollover from hitting the side. And then we hit just basic. We did simple single Sinawali, high, low, high, low. Well, in a few strokes, the blades were destroyed, all nicked up from running into each other. And Chad and I, we showed everyone and go, oh my God, it's ruined. They went, no kidding. And again, for training, how has it changed? In the old days, you would not destroy steel. Very hard to make steel. In Japan, the image of Japan that it took, all this rice, a year's worth of rice to make a sword. It's special. Remy's doing a demo with Roland in Madison Square Garden. The sparks are flying from the machetes hitting. When it gets done, the blades are ruined, they're gouged, whatever. I said, you ruined the blades. He goes, oh, they're just machetes. We throw them out. I said, oh my God, Remy, I can tell this is the modern you. You're just going to throw them out? At least in the old days, they would have melted them down again and reused the steel. But here he is, they're all, that's just throw them out. That's a modern culture. The same thing about knights in armor to Europe, how things change. And the Filipinos have changed this way too. That originally knights in army spent your whole life learning what the tool does. So the knights would laugh, and the idea of a knight and learning what your tool does goes down the tubes as soon as you start you can make mass-produced swords and give them to the public and have foot soldiers, and everybody's got swords. So whatever they do is okay, because we have traveling armories where you hand in your bad swords, we reforge them, clean up the edges, hand them back out. Nobody owns the swords, they're army pieces. And the knights do. What happens? The knights have disdain for all the normal people doing this. Well, the same kind of thing with the Philippines, because you got to remember, it's sort of based on, a whole Spanish culture of those who know, and have disdain for people who just weave things around. So going back to what you said, I think one of the best changes is people now are proud to still teach tradition, what they call, whatever it is, traditional Filipino arts. They're not worried someone's going to laugh at them and go, oh, we do combatives, or we do sport, oh, that's not good enough, because we don't laugh at anybody anymore. We accept everybody. I think this is the best thing about FMA these days. It's, you still get the idiots go, oh, I don't like that, or, that's stupid. But most of us are accepting of what goes on. And some people, as they've made the journey from traditional to sparring to combatives, they look down at everyone as they make their new discovery. And some of us who are old guys look at them and go, been there, done that. You'll get to a point where you're not condescending to anyone. I tell everyone, I share everybody's posts. I share everybody's type of FMA because I think it's all great. I think it's stunning. In my book, FMA Masters and Grandmasters, which is a forward from Benjamino Aquino. I wrote a forward for my book.
Wow.
It's in the library.
Who would you say inspires you?
Well, obviously Remy inspired me to start with. Really got me going. Remy sent me to see Guru Dan, so I'm a seminar junkie for Guru Dan. And all his videos and books. Bobby Tabata, because his groupings and his, he's an old boxer, and I was not a great boxer. We had a woman championship boxer where I went to school, and she needed a punching dummy. And I was the right size. So I was forced to learn boxing so I wouldn't get killed because I was the right size for her. Taught me a lot about body motion and what I do. Remy being Wally J taught me a great deal because I love the idea of small circle and manipulation, engineering myself, how joints manipulation goes. Cristino Vasquez, because he was sort of like the fighter of modern East and a good country guy. And his loyalty to the Praise House. He's Remy's, we know, was Remy's first cousin, and he did Bolo. Roland Dantes, because Roland is the premier bodybuilder from the Philippines on the same stage as Arnold and Frank Zane and all the rest of them. And he was, a true military guy who put the Arnis to use. And William Chung, I know other people may not like something, lots of discussion. William Chung gave me a great deal of his soul and what to do. I love Wing Chun. That was one of my very first arts. I'd learned Hungar. The instructor got injured. This little guy came in. This tell you how long ago, bowl haircut like the Beatles, platform shoes and bell bottoms. I'm like, who the hell is it? Does Hungar, couldn't care. Meets me in the locker room, goes, you want to really learn how to fight? I said, what do you think I take Hungar for? And then he beat the snot out of me. Just came right. And I said, what's that? And he goes, you have to pay me extra and I'll teach this on the side. You can't tell anyone we train it. I did that for a long time. Then he said I needed to punch someone else to train with. So I took the second guy in class and went, do you want to do this? He said, what do you think same thing. What do you think I take Hungar for? So I didn't know what it was. And it wasn't until we were watching Enter the Dragon that we went, because nobody talked about Wing Chun. I went, oh my God, that's what we do. And Steve started taking us into the Tiger Crane School in New York, and we realized we were doing Hong Kong Wing Chun. And it's always been a good base for me. I look up to the guys who started the PK in our school, John and Pat Worley, Larry Carnahan, Gordon Franks, because they taught me about sport karate. And I don't mean point karate, the first full contact karate, and let me be part of that group. I was not a great fighter. I was not part, but I was part of their family group. We all trained it in the school and whatever. Clarence Murray, because like I said in originally, Clarence was a Budo master, didn't really talk about knives, and he opened the door and spent so much time with me, gave me one of his original sets of sais and encouraged me. And he's still one of my dear friends. And he looked at me and said, Bram, you're the student a lot of us instructors dream about, because all those years ago when I spent that time with you, those couple of years with you, I never would have expected you would surpass me and become basically a blade master under Remy and under Ernesto, and that you would design all these knives, do all this stuff. You make me proud. I said, I'm glad I make you proud because you helped. And I said, Remy, I always give credit to Remy because Remy opened so many doors, and he'd stay at the home with me. We would talk, we wouldn't train, and I get all upset when we didn't train. And I next day go to do something, you go, oh, you must spend hours training Remy. Look at all the new stuff. Because of talking. It was inspiration, because you learn from talking and sharing, not just physically. Thomas Lehman, who's my most senior student, spent a couple of weeks with me. We didn't train a lot physically. He was really pissed at me when he left. When his mom died, by the way, my mom adopted him. So he's been my adopted stepbrother for almost 30 years. And
Wow.
he went back to Germany. He was really pissy. Went back to his school, was teaching. He went, oh my God, how did you fit all that? Look at all the cool stuff you learned. He goes, you suck. I actually learned from just talking. He goes, I used to hear you tell me you did that with Remy. He goes, you just did it with me. I said, I know. There's a sharing. There's something about sharing. And FMA being tribal allows that. A lot of other arts are not tribal. You can't go in and teach. Remy used to go, day one, go teach. You learn fastest from teaching. Share it. Traditional Asian arts, Chinese and Japanese, especially Japanese, you don't dare teach above your level or try to show anything. Even if you can do it, that's insulting by culture, not by skill. And in the Philippines, it's tribal. Everybody shares. I had to get used to eating with my fingers, like being back in the Middle East, and scooping out of the bowl in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I'd look at him and go, oh, I spoiled my wife, by the way. Yeah, I brought Western stuff. But yeah, Remy is an inspiration group. And some of the people I train with, Dan Anderson, I go back a long way. He actually got me into modern Arnis. I consider my older brother. We both started in 1980 with Remy. Started right after he did, literally right after. Bruce Chu, Brian Zalalinsky, Chad Bailey. We all share with each other. And I told you I don't do stick stuff. I hate tappy tappy. Grab the stick. They look at this stuff. Bruce Chu stands up at the last big seminar and goes, Bram talks about Remy as inspiration and influence, and Bram lies. I'm looking at him, what do you mean I lie? And he goes, you told all of us you don't do tappy tappy, and you don't do tappy tappy with a stick with us. And he goes, watch Bram. He goes, tell me how he's not doing tappy tappy with a knife. And I'm like, I don't do tappy tappy with a knife. Well, he goes, oh my God, you're doing tappy tappy with a knife. I said, no, I'm not. And they go, yes, you are. You just can't see the association because you refuse to do it with a stick, and you just don't do the grabbing part. I said, I do. So yeah, it's Teddy Lukai, Sonny Umpai, people I've met, spent time with. They've influenced me. But like I said, my main core, Remy was one of those who opened the doors for me. And his big thing was, you have to have fun. He wanted me to go slowly and understand it. And that I had to translate it, and then innovate new things off of it to make it mine. I've never had anybody else tell me, make it my own. Make his art the art within my art. Don't forget what I know, but take all the concepts of what he's got and add it in. And FMA is one of those few arts that conceptually, the moves are all the same, no matter what's in our hands. And we have a lot of that HEMA stuff. And, it's based on a real biomechanical function. My arms are open, my arms are closed. Okay, because that's biomechanical, and be in front of my body, not behind. So I can be, I follow, I open, I close, I close. I can alternate, open, close, or, Sinawali, I can weave.
Yes. Sinawali, yeah.
Yeah, end of story. So with that, FMA lets you take pieces of other things and put it in where other arts wouldn't. So as in, who's influenced me? FMA as a whole has influenced me to be more accepting, that I can take things. It's like cooking. Cooking is an art. Baking is a science. You don't follow the directions of baking, you get a puddle, the cake doesn't work. You get a hockey puck, it's too soft. But cooking, well, you can mix and match things and be an artist. FMA lets you be an artist within the art, and you can hold parts in your heart and move on. But yeah, for influence, the list I've said, and if I've forgotten anybody, I'm sorry. And I read a lot.
No, brilliant. Do you speak any other languages?
I was that first group of the 50s and 60s. They tried to teach us Puerto Rican Spanish. That's what tells me, because there were a lot of Puerto Ricans outside of New York. We should learn Spanish. So they brought in someone who taught us Castilian Spanish, which, if you're not in Spain, it's like High German.
Yes.
There's High German, Low German, Swiss German, whatever. And they're all different kinds of German, but it's not High German. So Castilian is old-fashioned High Spanish, and nobody speaks it really. And I just couldn't deal with it. Then I went off to prep school, and Mr. Avia taught me Cuban Spanish, and I fell in love with it. There's nobody spoke Spanish up there in New England where I was. And when I got down to Miami in Florida, after years of traveling around the US, I realized I maintained a great deal of Cuban Spanish in me. I understand more than I can speak. I can read. I pick up conversations. This also now relates to the Philippines. My family's been in Israel since 1918. I come from the 50s, 60s group of American Jews that even our rabbi spoke English. On our bar mitzvah, our 13th thing, we had to read Hebrew, and it had the English next to it so we could, know how to pronounce it. Because we were proud to be Americans.
Yes.
Grandparents wanted me to speak Russian, Yiddish, Hebrew, and English, and I was a stupid kid because I wanted none of it. I was stupid. I should have learned my grandfather spoke 7 languages. I should have learned the native language of Russian. I should have learned Yiddish, which is Star Trek speak. It's ghetto speak. All the people in the ghettos who had multiple languages, Yiddish is made up so they all had Federation speak. They didn't speak their own language. They had a language they could all communicate in. And I should have learned it. I should have learned Spanish. So that takes me to the Philippines. Do I understand Tagalog? No. Ilocano? No. Visayan? No. And all the other, the 286 whatever languages. When I'm in Israel, I understand enough Hebrew by ear I make the right comments back. When I'm in Russia, I feel like the 13th warrior. I can almost I hear the stuff, I can make the right kind of comments back.
Yeah.
My mom's family's from Belarusia, and my dad's family's from the same kind of regional area, Ukraine and Czech Republic back then, Czechoslovakia back then.
Wow.
But anyways,
What is the funniest moment in your personal experience in martial arts? There must have been some funny moments that you can remember as far back when you were doing it.
Language. I'm sitting with Nova at the table, just so people, because they ask me what languages, and they're talking, and I really felt like the 13th warrior. I knew what they were saying. So I say something back, and Nova goes, "You understood what we said?" I went, "Actually, yes." Turns out they're speaking Cebuano. Cebuano is bastardized Spanish. How the hell did I know? Because that's where the Spanish landed, was in Cebu. That's the center. Most of what we know of FMA comes from the Visayas, basically from Cebu and Negros. It doesn't come from any other island. That's, it's a small area that populated the world with FMA.
Wow.
Modern times it spread to other islands, but that's so I went, oh, yeah, I've had some funny times in martial arts of people and doing stuff. When I first met Remy, I came across the floor. I'm way in the back at a seminar, and it's like the Red Sea, Moses. Everybody's moving. He comes right over, goes, "My name's Remy. What's your name?" And I'm like, Bram. He goes, "Bram, I'm Remy. I'm going to be your friend for life. You're going to be my friend for life. Come with me." I went, "Okay." And then I was stuck with him for all those years. He takes me up front. He starts using me. And I'm a good kid. I understand martial arts, so it hurts. I'm not saying a word. He's jacking me around. He stops. "Does this hurt?" I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "Well, you should tap when it hurts." I never heard about tapping back then. We're talking like 1980.
Oh,
So,
dear.
he starts to do it. Starts over. So I tap, and he goes, "That does not hurt." Crack. And he goes, I'm like, "Oh!" He goes, "That hurts. Now you can tap." I said, "You didn't let go." He goes, "No, I didn't say I'd let go. I just know I shouldn't go any further."
Oh, I love it. Do you have, well, actually, it might have gave me an answer from behind you, because there was a nice pet that I noticed moving around. Do you have any pets?
The queen of the house is moving around somewhere. She's a wildcat. Someone, I got her because she had been abandoned in an apartment when she was under a year old. And I went to the rescue shelter, and you sign up to see different animals.
Yeah.
And the first few wanted nothing to do with me. They bring her in, this little kitten, and she runs up and she's on my legs. She's jumping all over. I said, "Well, we're done." Then one goes, "You don't want to see any more cats?" I said, No, I'll take this one." So she's been with me 10 years now. She knows all my knives. She sits under my dummies, my cutting dummies and my fighting dummies while I train. Lays right under there. When they're filming on the table, playing with the knives, and she knows not to jump on the live blades. And I've grown up with, my folks used to raise German Shepherds. So I always grew up with German Shepherds. And when I first was married and my first child, I went back to our breeder, my parents' breeder, where they got their main dogs from, and got dogs from them. I love dogs, but they don't fit with my lifestyle.
Yeah,
but I'm really a cat person. My first pet that was just mine was a cat, because I'm allergic. I wasn't supposed to have pets technically as a kid. And my father found one out on the road when we were coming home in a bag. Someone just threw it out, little kid.
Oh, no, wow, yeah.
Actually brought it home. And because of my asthma, my grandfather had an air conditioner, one of these giant things, so that I could have filtered air, and I had a filter in my room. The reason I'm saying is I had to have a side window that opened. So my cat used to climb up onto the roof, climb onto where I was, and I'd let him in my room with my door shut in the window. And of course, I'd forget. My mom would come at night. There's the cat who's supposed to be outside, sleeping on my chest or curled up in my bed with me. And after a while, they quit telling me I couldn't have the cat in the room with me. But I love cat. Zahara is the queen of the house. And yeah, Tom Gallo says she's not real. She's CGI, that I fake her to come into the videos with me. But yes, I have. And I have 2 daughters here, and I have 5 children in the Philippines. All of them are my stepchildren in the Philippines.
Wow. What's the weirdest thing a fan has ever done for you?
One more time.
What is the weirdest thing a fan has ever done for you?
A fan has ever done for me.
Yeah, the most weirdest thing that you thought, oh, why would you do that?
My God, I get odd things. Example of people come up to me and go, on my pictures, say like in the booth at the show, for example, they go, I've trained with that guy. And I look at my picture, I look at them, they're telling me all the things they've done with me. And this one guy's doing that. He looks at the picture, steps back, gets in my face, looks at me, goes back to the picture and goes, "Oh my God, that's you. I've trained with you." I'm like, "I don't know you." And the guy goes, "Yeah, in Philadelphia, you were helping Remy teach." And I went, He goes, "Well, if I help Remy teach, it's not my seminar. I didn't pay attention." I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's not quite a fan, but I have people who pretended me. They look like me. They went around Europe pretending to be me and teaching seminars. And I had guys come and go, "How do I renew my certificate?" And I went, "Who are you?" And they show me the certificate that's almost mine with not, a poor copy of my signature. And I went, "That's not mine. I didn't train you." And this guy from Brazil was running around Europe posing as me, hair cut like me, posing as me. And went, "Oh my God." But I have another one. I'm in Germany at IWA. So Joyce Lighturius Spider goes with me and Thomas. And we don't have any IDs on yet. It's the first day. We're just setting up. This guy comes over, looks at the knives on the table, goes, "I helped Bram design those knives." And I just look at him. Thomas went, and I stop him. Joyce is like this. I'm like this. And this guy goes, "Yeah, I'm always at Bram's house. It's filled with weapons, and describes all this stuff about my house." And I said, "Really?" Goes, "Yeah, and I'm all the time." And I helped him design that knife. So I look at the guy and I take out my business card and I palm it. I take that hand and said, "You know what? The next time you see Bram, you tell him you met me in Germany." He goes, "Yeah, I'll do that." He gets about 5 steps away, looks at the card, looks at me, and then runs. And Thomas goes, "Should I go after him?" I said, "No, he'll have a story to tell for the rest of his life." Now, you can see there's stuff behind me, right? So I'm just going to turn this around a minute. My house is filled with comic book stuff.
Wow.
And there's almost, obviously there's knives and stuff over there and outside, but most of it is sci-fi and comic stuff. So people go, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm a normal guy. I'm a sci-fi nerd. I'm a comic nerd."
Oh,
I grew up,
wow.
and I love Edgar Rice Burroughs. I make all my students read the Martian series of Edgar Rice Burroughs, John Carter. John Carter is my ultimate hero. I base my life on John Carter. And I make them all read the book.
You mentioned the comic stuff. Actually, this is the next question I'd like to ask. It's brilliant. If you had a choice of superpowers and you could involve your Philippine martial arts, what would you have and why would you use them? Any form of powers that you could have. You can have more than one and you could use them with your FMA.
I think I like the idea, without John Carter, because I got to backtrack, there's no Superman. Because John Carter goes to a planet that has smaller gravity, and all of a sudden, he can jump further, he's faster, he's stronger, and he was already, John Carter is the basis for Highlander, and Michael Moorcock's Undying Warrior. Because if you read the first few paragraphs where he just sort of blips by it, he says he always remembers being 30 and always being a warrior for different kings and emperors all throughout time. So he's always been a warrior. I would guess I would like, John Carter's fighting ability and ability to be fast, jump better, and move better, or like the Black Swordsman, the old style Black Swordsman in the comics, where it becomes the Black Knight that used to fight Hawkeye and those guys and come on, because there's being a better Knight of the Round Table. I wouldn't want to be the guy. I'd want to be invincible, because that's cheating. There's no element. Because there's something about the risk of injury, the risk of death, that adds an element of life. And, that's the adrenaline factor. And, it's not that John Carter and people like him as heroes, Tarzan, it's not that they couldn't get hurt. It's that they were able to most of the time transcend it. And John Carter to me is like Wile E. Coyote. Never give up. Wiley never loses faith in Acme and never gives up. And John Carter, it's one of the things like, he'd be in a place where it looks like he's done and he goes, I still live. And while I still live, I never give up. And I like that. I like that kind of superpower that I'm able to transcend the time and make what I do better, simpler but better. John Carter was the first hero I read about, because Edgar Rice Burroughs was in the cavalry. He actually did saber, he did shooting. He was that's why the red men, the Indians who we met, are the heroes. And and the worst people there are the white colonial people with their, the wigs, the thorns, and what. So I love Thor. I love Wolverine. I guess if I had to pick an actual single power, maybe a healing power, like Wolverine.
Yeah, I like that.
At least I could heal and go, God, I shouldn't have done that. But again, I think it makes you careless. I tell people, if you don't think you can get hurt, you can be killed. So I'll go back to sticking with John Carter. I would just like to be that kind of person. Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, faster than a speeding bullet, able to, I fell in love with that kind of stuff. But John Carter's my ultimate hero.
If you had a choice to speak to a historical person or anyone who's alive, who would it be, and where would you have dinner with them, and what would you talk about?
I think I'd have to have a couple, because I'd like to talk with Michelangelo.
Wow, yes.
I'm stunned by Michelangelo's artwork. There's a couple artists that work. I would like to do that. Da Vinci, because he's a true Minson, and with invention, thinks out of the box. And with either of them, I could have some nice pasta. And Van Gogh, just because I love Van Gogh's craziness. Now, on the side of that, I think I grew up with friends. My mom was friends with Wolf Winton, and Wolf Winton's wife. He's another sci-fi writer who's best friends with Isaac Asimov. So I used to spend time with Isaac Asimov. So I can't say, I'd like to go back and wish I could talk to him, because I did grow up talking to him. My dad was friends with Frank Frazetta and those guys. So it's not like they were my friends. I'm part of an artist community because of my dad. So I got to talk to them, and I got to see Frank and Ellie before they passed away. And I'm still friends with Laurie Frazetta and Frank Frazetta Jr. But I think I'd like to talk to Edgar Rice Burroughs, because he's my ultimate author, and so many of his characters, he's the first in the multiverse. His characters jump from story to story, and Edgar Rice Burroughs' stories are this. They're not, you read one and you're done. There's a series, and somewhere in that series, someone there interacts with someone in another series. And there's something about the breadth of what he did, and he removed himself from the culture and the prejudices of his time in his writing. People go, look what's going on. I said, no, you got to understand. There's a bit of stereotypes in his book, and then he moves past them. He wrote heroes who were broader and stronger than the normal human, but maintained humanity in them. And I'd like to talk to him, because I'm an author as well, and I write. I used to do. I've done some comic work. I was a journalist for a long time. I write books. I love to write and read. But Edgar Rice Burroughs has affected me so much. Yeah, I'd like to speak to Edgar Rice Burroughs, and I could probably just have a nice casual American style meal. Like roasted chicken or beef or something, or some fish, and be happy. I owned the sushi bar for a while. Not because I know how to do sushi. It's because I could sit there, my brother and me, we'd go and tell them what we want. We took no profits out, just so we could have sushi. I said, come on with me. Let me feed you some sushi. And at the end of dinner, go, no, I'll take the bill, knowing there's no bill. Then I could be the big man. I love sushi. I went to school to learn how to cook Chinese cooking. And people listen, there's someone in Chinese history or martial art history you'd want to meet. And I said, I've been blessed that some of the greatest ones in modern era who are not myth, I happen to spend time with and train with. So I don't have to say, oh, like a lot of my students never met Remy. Well, you know, I ate with him, trained with him. He lived in you know, and I got to spend time going out to dinner with a lot of the others because I was with them. But out of time, like I said, for artists, Leonardo da Vinci, because he's inventor and stuff, that inspires me. Michelangelo for his art, and Van Gogh, just because he's got that crazy feel for him, the way he related to color. And yes, I think Edgar Rice Burroughs, believe it or not.
Oh, brilliant.
Isaac Asimov used to, and Wolf Went used to leave books in my mailbox because Wolf's wife, Ruth, was the school librarian, and my mother was the a teacher there, and then the school psychologist. They lived around the corner. So he and these other people used to leave sci-fi books in and Isaac leave books in my mailbox and sign them. And after you read them, everybody signed it and moved it on. So they're all giving it to the young kid. I read all the books. I take the very first book I ever paperback I bought from Ruth at the time when we found it at a bookstore in our school. And I write my name and I put it in the mailbox. They went, "Why are you giving us the books back? They're for you." I said, no, I was young. I was so excited to be part of this book club. I read the books, put mine, said, "Isn't that what you do?" And they went, "Yeah." They said, "You sure you don't want the books?" Now I regret I didn't keep the book signed by Isaac and Wolf and all of them. They go, "Look at all these people I have." But they're the ones who turned me on to Edgar Rice Burroughs, Robert E. Howard, and E. Doc Smith, who wrote the Lensman series and the Skylark. And they said,
The
these
other,
are some.
the other thing is there's a couple actually. Is like, what is your favorite dish apart from sushi that you mentioned?
Yeah, sushi. I love Chinese food, proper Chinese food. I love Fukian cooking. I love Szechuan. I am an utterly dyed in the wool, proper Peking duck person.
Wow.
Like I grew up in New England. My ultimate is simple Ipswich whole belly fried clams, dusted in a little corn flour, dropped in the hot oil, dropped on your plate. Absolutely gorgeous. So when I'm in UK, believe it or not, simple Bram, I love great fish and chips.
Ooh, yes.
I love crispy on the outside, that fluffy fish. Yeah, but I'm not a big meat eater. You know, I will eat it, but a lot of times I eat it Asian style. You know, I love pork.
Ah.
You know, I love crispy pork, but I love I love proper Peking duck.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Lovely. What
And
is your favorite film? Do you have a favorite film?
Absolutely, Forbidden Planet. It's my ultimate favorite film, Forbidden Planet. I love the idea that the monsters were from within, from in the id.
Yeah.
You know, and it was done in 1956. I was born in 53. And we had a WOR TV, Channel 9, and they would pick one movie and play it multiple times in a day for the whole week. So I used to sit there and watch all the horror films that way, and The Crimson Pirate and Forbidden Planet. And then my grandfather got a color TV. You know, we had to adjust all the colors. We're talking,
Yeah.
you know. So I drove my grandfather nuts because I'd go stay with my grandfather and I would watch Forbidden Planet probably like 6 to 8 times in a day for as many days in a row as I could. I love Bobby the Robot. I love the idea of the crowd. One of my adventure movies is the old Errol Flynn Robin Hood. You know, I love film. You know, I love David Lynch's Dune. I like that Frank Herbert was the advisor on it. It's obviously since he passed away, he never had contributed anything else. So some of the subtle changes from the book to the movie, you know, he okayed some of it. Some of it didn't, some of it did. But I still like that. But Forbidden Planet, that's my number one movie. Like I say, you know, it's old style movies. I like the old Jack the Giant Killer. And people go, what?
Yes.
Great being the old original Hercules Unchained, Steve Reeves. I mean, oh my God, those kind of things, I do like them. And do I like cartoons? Yes, I love Ratatouille. I mean,
Ah,
Disney films that I really like. I grew up with Disney, even though they're so wokey now. But I love Ratatouille, and especially because the rat's Remy. And it's about cooking because I went to cooking school. I used to cater, do cooking in my uncle's delis and stuff. I love to cook. I love Ratatouille, but ultimate film, ultimate film is Forbidden Planet.
oh wow. And two things. Lastly, because I'm enjoying this interview so much, I'd love to do a second one with you, Bram. The last two questions I like to ask you is, if you had a choice to go anywhere to travel and you just packed your bags, you didn't have to worry about anything, where would you like to go and why?
Where would I go? I used to deploy 250 days a year out of country. I'm not used to being here. I've lived all over the US. Let me just say that I love Vancouver, BC. Every little boy can grow up to be the queen. It's really Hongcouver. And when China took over Hong Kong, everything was already directly there. They are a stunning city and beautiful people. Most people don't believe it because I grew up in the mountains of New England and in country area, but I actually love Venice. And the reason I'm saying it is I love Venice. Venice, I just feel at home. My students who live there, they told me I know Venice better. I walk around there for hours. There's no grass, there's no trees, the exact opposite of what I'd expect. And I just love the feel of Venice. Same kind of feel I get, I love being in Vancouver.
Yes.
The other part is, as primitive as it is, I love the Philippines.
Yes.
I can live out in the provinces, and I've had, when I first got there, family and friends look at me and go, "We can't believe how you just become Filipino when you're here." And afterwards, I can't believe I can live as primitively out in the province at times as I do. I bitch a little bit, but I adapt to it. And then when I've gone to Moscow, and I teach there, I want you to know Moscow is actually a very modern city. I could probably live in Moscow and deal with it. And Caesarea. I don't know if I could deal with Tel Aviv, but I could go anytime I want because I have right of return. My grandparents and I have hundreds and hundreds of relatives in Israel. I've always liked Caesarea. I could go live in Israel.
Oh, yeah. And actually, this is going to throw a curveball. There's two more actually, because I wanted to fit this in. This is awesome. Do you sing in the shower?
I am one of those people. Sometimes I talk about beats and notes when I'm teaching, and the worst sound any human ear could ever hear is me trying to make a song or a sound. So I don't actually sing. I can hear stuff. I do draw, I doodle, I do tattoo flash, I turned Filipino fighting
Oh wow,
into
awesome.
tattoos. I was called a living treasure because I turned them into Celtic design. But no, I don't sing. You never want to hear Bram sing because glass breaks, eardrums blow up.
Okay, and lastly, just to wrap things up, because I'm so honoured to be in your presence, Bram, is what advice would you give your younger self?
To stay and do what I did because I don't listen to others. I'm Cancerian, emotions affect me, but I've always walked to my own beat. I've never worked for anybody else. When I designed my knives, people told me, lose the bramp, lose the clip, lose the indexing, and I might have a nice knife. And of course, as Joyce Laturi said, I've outlived my detractors. When I started doing modular and tried to figure out a simple training methodology based on biomechanics, people said, that's really stupid. I used to build hydroponic systems. People, why would you do that? I believe in closed-end system recycling. Yes, I believe in green, but not what they're doing now. Green is 200 years from now. We don't have a way to accomplish. But I would tell myself, don't listen to others. Be true to yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, nothing works. So whether or not anyone else likes it, screw them. I collect old books. I collect stuff. I'm almost a hoarder in a way, but and even though I cry about it, I believe in me. I do believe in me, and I believe I have the right way. So I would tell my younger self, stay your course. Because a lot of times I wanted to give up, but I stayed the course. I'm the Energizer Bunny. Like I said, it's why I like John Carter and Wiley. I truly never give up. I keep going. And I think that's what I want. I would restate to myself that is sometimes much as it hurts, don't give up. Stay your course. I believe in you, believe in me.
FMA, Paul.
Yes.
Oh, Bram, you know what? This is one of my dreams come true of actually having you on the Phil Carew Show, and it's happened now. And I really appreciate you, and on having an honor in having this you in my presence here on the Phil Carew Show. And I'd love to have you back again at some point whenever you're ready, when you're free. You know, take two, part two, Bram Frank.
You got it. Thank you, Phil, for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. And I had a blast. And you can see, I just like babbling. You know, I can sometimes because I'm Cancerian and talk in circles, I do get back to the point eventually. But yeah,
No,
thank you.
That's fine. No, I appreciate that. And the reason why, you know, I mentioned this before to the audience, it's because, you know, sometimes when they see something now, you can edit it, pre-edit it. And that the reason why sometimes I don't edit it is because I like to see people see the reality, the genuine, you know, something that's genuine rather than it's all, you know, all this glitzy stuff. You can edit it to make it look great, but then don't you enjoy it more when the reality of when you see the bloopers, it makes you laugh and you see the real stuff, even behind the real deal behind the scenes. When you watch that, you think, oh my goodness, that's actually pretty interesting. Whereas if you're so used to the glitzy stuff.
Yeah, that's all like Graham Norton, because it's one of the few interview shows where it doesn't matter if they blip it. They're, you know, they just go right around it, and I laugh. But yes, I agree with what you're saying. I think it's a little more personal and more human, you know, when it's just there. And you know, and I usually film straight through. You know, when I'm doing my instructional videos, I had a couple people for Budo go, "Do you have a script?" No. You do have a course? No. You're just going to film it? Yes. And I think 2 times I broke out laughing. We had to just do it. And he goes, I can't believe you filmed 3 discs worth of videos. You didn't repeat it, and you did his whole course. I said, it's in my head. I'm a good Minson kid. And it's a little more human that way. I hate it, you know. You guys can break it whenever you want. So, yeah. Anyways, thank you for doing it this way and bearing with me.
No, that's fine. I've you know what, I've always learned now that the more patient you become in having people like yourself, which, like I said, in having the honor of having your presence here on the show, is that I think in reality, a lot of people tend to think, you know, you have to have content and material where when you meet people, everything has to be all squeezed into something, and then you get level points of where people say, well, look, the shorter it is, you know, people lose contact after about 20 minutes or something, and you think, well, actually, I'm not trying to be a Joe Rogan, but I'm being myself. Why should I try and copy and replicate other people and become something that I'm not, when I'm actually doing something now and it's real? Because I don't, number one, it's not scripted. Secondly, it's not staged. And then the third last thing, it's genuine and it's real. I don't have to edit something where I have to pretend that I've just put you in, you know, and I have never met you. Whereas this is real. I've actually met you now and you're on the camera. You know, I remember the first time I did it with Bob Breen, Serious CMAC, and then even Guru Melkor, Moscow, and which we call Maestro, and then even Punong Guru Wayne Hunt, which I've mentioned, and there for the representation for Armado Arnis, and a lot of people, even like yourself, when they hear about this or when they see it, it's usually about 5 to 10 seconds. When they see it, they think, oh, well, if he edited it, or when you edit something, you know, when you do this and you do that, you know, he must have put that in, or he must have done that. I said, well, your views and your thoughts are valid. That's brilliant. But what you don't understand is what you've got to see is the genuality, you know, how genuine things are. When I'm speaking to you, you can't edit something where I've got this screen here where I'm speaking to you and yourself, and then make it out I didn't really speak to you, and then edit in, you know, the special effects where, you know, I don't need to do that. Whereas you can tell if someone was actually to see this now after I've launched it, they'll realize it's genuine, because, you know, there's a time frame of when I speak to you, when I've started and when I ended, and you realize how long the actual interview was. They'll think, oh my goodness, you know, it's actually real.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think we talked about off screen before we got that. There's something about a candid conversation that it doesn't have to be all this instructional stuff and jumping out and proving it. It's two people actually talking and just going, hey, what are your thoughts? And I liked that some of your stuff jumped around. What do I like to see or do? You know, what music, you know, art, what people. You asked good, because it's about who the person is. Most people want to go, show me your cool martial arts stuff. I'm like, my God, I got videos for that. I've got, you know, courses, digital courses that you come train with me. But most people don't talk to the other people as people. It's about who you are. So yeah, no, I appreciate it very much.
No, it's much appreciated here as well, Bram, you know, and it's not about me, the Phil Carew Show. It's about yourself, the guest, you know, and I've learned a lot from this, and a lot from many of my guests, and like yourself. And yeah, what I'll do is just, guys, before we go after this video, please don't forget to subscribe, and there'll be some information if you want to know a lot more about Bram and his weaponry and his actual expertise and courses that he's got. I'm going to get some more information from Bram. So what I'll do, when I launch this, which you'll see when it's been launched, click the button below underneath and some links, and that they will lead into some information that he'll be able to give me, so in the foreseeable future. Thank you very much, everyone, guys. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Bram Frank and myself. And like I said, it's been such an honor, Bram, and I'll never forget this this interview. And I'll look forward to having more interviews with you in the foreseeable future, not just about martial arts, but about other topics, because like you said, and rightly so, it's not just about the martial arts, it's about the person.
Yeah, but thank you so much, Phil. I appreciate it.
Take care, Bram, and thank you very much.
Great. Have a
Bye
great
for
day.
now. Take care.
Bye.